You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Kensington's latest summer release, Twice a Quinceañera by Yamile Saied Méndez. This Own Voices multicultural rom-com tells the tale of a jilted bride who, rather than lose the deposit on her wedding venue, decides to throw herself a quinceañera, ×2 for her 30th birthday. It's a little bit Never Been Kissed with a little more 13 going on 30 and a hint of The Wedding Singer, all of my favorites. Plus, there's nothing I love more than a badass, accomplished woman celebrating herself and creating her own happily ever after. Add in an Argentinian family, a romance with a college fling, and one hell of a party, and I'm sold. While Twice a Quinceañera might be her debut adult novel, Yamile is already a known name in the kidlit and YA communities. In fact, her young adult novel, Furia, was a Reese Witherspoon Hello Sunshine YA pick. Full of exuberant heart, Twice a Quinceañera is a pure delight for every woman who needs to be her own biggest fan and who dreams of a second chance at first love. Plus, it takes place in Utah, so if you're keeping up with our 50 Romances, 50 States reading challenge, just saying. Twice a Quinceañera by Yamile Saied Méndez is available now wherever books are sold. Find more new and upcoming books you'll love at kensingtonbooks.com. And now, back to the show. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today we're kicking off the 6th season of Boobies and Newbies with another Steamy Spotlight author interview. Thanks to everybody who joined us for season 5 of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed our debut summer special, Slick Summer Nights. It's something that I'd love to bring back next year, and I'm already putting together lists of sexy scenes I'd love to see on it. But we've got time, so I've had a couple of weeks to rest, relax, and ultimately prepare for season 6, which will take us all the way to the end of 2022, culminating in, you guessed it, our annual holiday extravaganza, the 12 Days of Boobsmas. More on that later. You can always catch up on past episodes of the podcast on our website, boobiesandnewbies.com, or on your favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow Boobies and Newbies across social platforms at Boobies Podcast or at Boobies Podcast with 2 zeros instead of O's on TikTok because they think I'm making porn. If you're a fan of the podcast and you've got a few minutes to spare, I'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. In fact, I will be doing a giveaway in the upcoming months that you will automatically be entered in if you leave us a review. So this is the perfect time to do it. Lastly, if you want to be the first to know what we're reading next and have exclusive access to bonus clips, private chats, and so much more, you might consider hopping on over to our Patreon page. As per usual, I will include links for all of the above in today's show notes. And now, please join me in welcoming Erin La Rosa, author of the recently released Enemies to Fake Dating to Lovers Romance, For Butter or Worse. Welcome, Erin.
Kelly, thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted.
This podcast has been a long time in the making. I'm so excited that we are here, that our wonderful mutual friend, Becky Feldman, host of Too Stupid to Live, introduced us, and that we get to talk about your delightful book.
I think I reached out to you. I feel like it was maybe like end of last year or something. I was like, Kelly, you don't know me, but I love your podcast. I was like, I have a book coming out. Can we talk about it?
Oh, no, you better believe I brought up your email that you sent me originally last year. And because I wanted to get exactly what you said right, because the way you pitched the book, I was like, please say less because I love everything about this. Your exact words, let's see if I can find it, were, it's basically if Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry from The Great British Baking Show, which I love, we're hot 30-somethings who have to fake date in order to save their careers. And then on top of that, you added that, you know, your female protagonist is dealing with online sexism as well as sexism she faces as a chef, which I definitely want to talk about, and that your male love interest has severe anxiety and panic attacks. I was like, oh my God, sign me up. I want all of this.
I think like it's so funny because yeah, I feel like those are the things that I really love and feel passionate about the book. And I was nervous people might, I don't know, not want to hear about that because they are more serious issues, but it's been really nice to hear from people who are just like, I relate so much to this character, or even with Nina, just it's been nice to hear women be like, it's nice to see a woman who doesn't have to soften or at no point really softens. And that was definitely intentional on my part.
Yeah. I have to tell you too, when I first got a advanced copy of the book in the mail, it went to my parents' house because I was staying with them and visiting. And so I, you know, showed them, I was like, oh, look what I got in the mail. And my dad, of all people, asked what it was about. And I told him, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry, and they have to fake a relationship. And he's like, wait a second. Like, they're in like their 50s and 60s, like maybe 70s. Like it's, and I was like, no, Dad, like look at the people on the cover. Do they look like it's like Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood? It's Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry inspired. He's like, oh, well, you didn't say that.
But that should be written.
Sweet Jesus.
That should be written. You don't see a lot of romance for older people.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I would love to see this book, but with the characters aged up to their 60s. I could go for that.
I do think 60s are hotter than 50s when you're thinking about age. I'm like, yeah, 60s sounds sexy. I'm like, 50s, I don't know. 50s is an in-between age.
60s to me is like if you did have children, you're probably at the age where they are like grown out of the house and started lives of their own at that point.
Yeah.
Like maybe not when you're in your 50s, but in your 60s, that then opens up your life. Like you get to start fresh and like what's this next chapter of your life gonna be?
Yep. See, I'll work on it. I'll think about it.
But that being said, and we will talk more about For Better or Worse, but I'd love to start by just asking you about your relationship with romance, both as a reader and writer, and you know how it all began.
You know, I feel like a lot of interviews that I listen to with people who are talking about how they got their start in romance, it's like they found, you know, a tattered copy of like a classic like romance book on their grandma's shelf and that inspired it all. For me, like I grew up in a pretty conservative house. Like I don't think my mom has ever read a romance. So unfortunately I didn't get that gift of like her having a book there, but I had the internet. And so what I would do is I feel like two things kind of started it for me. One, like instead of looking up porn, I always looked up dirty stories, and like I would look up like Googling, like, and I guess I don't even know if they had Google at that point. Like what was I searching on? I don't know. But I would find
Bing.
Like, yeah, maybe it was like a Bing search. I don't know.
Yahoo.
Yeah, because it would have been like late 90s. So whatever was around at that point. And then, so I would definitely print those out. We had one family computer, and so I would print them out. Like if my parents were out of the house, I would like quickly try to print them and like stuff them in a drawer and read them. And then
and clear the history, hopefully, on the computer.
I don't think I knew how to do that. I don't know. I don't remember doing that at all. And probably
I didn't either. That's how my parents like first found one of my friends and I that we had watched porn, was that we didn't know how to clear the history.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm sure my parents knew what I was up to and just like did not say anything. But then I started writing fanfic about Hanson, which was a band I was very into at the time, and in sync. Yeah. So that I feel like, and then I got really into the fanfic world, which I feel like is adjacent to romance because it is all just romance stories. And so I was doing that in middle school and high school. And then I feel like the first like true romance book I read maybe was Bridget Jones. And that's like romance light compared to what I read now. But Bridget Jones was like maybe my gateway drug of like, because I really loved books. I would always read books, but I feel like I was given like, you know, like series books. So like Babysitter's Club, like I was at like a young age with that. And then Bridget Jones was like more of an adult book that I read. And I was like, wow, this is so cool to read about like a like woman like who is really deeply insecure, but like figures out love. And I loved it. And so I think that started me on a journey with romance where I like wanted happily ever afters and like really craved them. And I probably wrote my first, well, I feel like I guess I stayed in the erotica zone for a while because actually I went to college for writing at Emerson, and I was in one of these like super pretentious writing classes where everyone is writing like literature with a capital L. And I wrote like an erotic
you could
story.
never bring like romance there because then it would just be like, what is this?
Yeah, you weren't supposed to, but I did write an erotic story and I brought it in to be workshopped.
Good for you.
And my teacher at the time was like, are you sure you want to share this? And I was like, yep, let's do it.
$100.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like.
Was it one of your Hanson or NSYNC fanfics? I would love to read those.
I know. I wish they still exist. I remember it was like an Angel Fire site that I had, so they're like totally gone and nothing is saved. But this was unfortunate because there was one dude in my writing class, and I had such a crush on him, and I think the title of the story was literally called "How to Seduce the Hot Guy in Your Writing Class" or something outrageous like that. And it was written about him and absolutely humiliated me. And I just did it anyways. And yeah, it worked out well. So that's how I met my husband. No, I'm kidding.
I was about to say, this is like listening to an episode of my favorite podcast, My Worst Date. And then it's like,
I need to
did
check
they get
that out.
together? Did they end up together? 10 years later, are they married?
That would be the rom-com version, yeah. No, that did not happen. He did reach out to me on, like, Facebook, like, 10 years later, and he was like, was that story about me? And I never responded because I was too humiliated.
There wouldn't have been a good answer, honestly.
No. It's not going anywhere good.
Although I have to say that story must have been something to make him wonder about it 10 years later enough to reach out.
It probably like scarred him for life. He was like, yeah, I took a writing class once and then this woman like sexually harassed me in the class by writing about me. It was probably not great.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. I love that. Yeah, fan fiction is like a world that I never really explored, but we actually did a podcast episode about fan fiction where my friend Abby came on and kind of schooled me in like the world of fan fiction, and just it's so fascinating. But I really especially love what it's done for exploring like queer characters, especially like in giving people like the endings that they wish that maybe they were even teased a little bit in like shows and movies
with TV shows.
Yeah, to then see them the way that they thought it should have happened. And so I do really appreciate what fan fiction has done as far as that.
Yeah, my favorite I feel like was, I mean, it wasn't even really like hinted at. It was so over. But did you ever watch Hannibal, the TV series?
I saw the pilot.
Oh, it's like so homoerotic between Will and Hannibal, and it is like the end episode, like the final episode, they're just like caressing each other in the rain, and the fanfic around that is outrageous and lovely.
I mean, caressing each other in the rain, it writes itself. Like they're what were they expecting?
It's happening.
Like, oh, they're just friends.
No, yeah. I think it was intentional at that point. I think the creator was like, you know what, I'm just gonna lean into this.
Good, as they should. As they should.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk about For Better or Worse, which at this point, by the time that this episode airs, will already be out in the world. And I was lucky enough to read an advanced copy and thoroughly enjoyed it because, again, you sold me with Great British Baking Show, you sold me with addressing several different stigmas. But I mean, let's start with Great British Baking Show, because I feel like there is a fandom who probably has also written fan fiction about people on that show in itself.
I know.
Are you a
I've
fan?
actually been, well, you know, I've watched every single season, and I think watching that show was part of my inspiration for this because,
Got it.
you know, I've been doing a lot of TikToks around this, but like, you know, it's not a huge secret, but Paul Hollywood is like a super problematic person.
Yes.
And as I was watching the series, I was like, I said to my husband, I was like, why do the women keep leaving? And I was like, I know why the women keep leaving, and I need to explore that. And so, you know, it kind of led me on this like rabbit hole of looking into the restaurant industry and finding out, you know, I'd always wanted to write a book where the woman is dominating in a male industry. And I didn't realize that food was such a male dominated industry in a really intense way. Like when I started writing the book, the stats were that only 7% of kitchens in America were run by women. Now it's 20%.
Wow.
But even of that 20%, like the women earn 93% of what the men earn. So it's like, you know, for women to not get to those top positions means that they're not selling cookbooks. They're not getting spots on shows. Like they're not earning that top money. And when you look at the top 20 highest paid chefs, only 3 are women. And it's Ina Garten, Rachel Ray, and
I'm trying to think of who the third one would be.
Italian chef.
Oh, Giada.
Very petite. Giada. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and you know, those women are not like super aggressive women, right? They're like super nurturing, super kind. But if you look at the top male chefs, so many of them are like these Gordon Ramsay, Paul Hollywood types that they are just very candidly themselves or very domineering. And so I really wanted Nina to be that version of a woman where she doesn't feel the need and feels that it's important to not be nurturing and feels that it's important to just speak her mind. And I wanted to see how she would be treated because of that.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. I mean, it's crazy to me that I'm like, oh, wow, we're up to 20% of like kitchens run by women. I'm like, but 20%, like, yes, is that a dramatic increase from 7%? Absolutely. But 20%, 20 out of 100, 20%,
right.
Insane. But I'm a fan of the Great British Baking Show. I'm also a fan of cooking shows in general, especially when it comes to competition. So like Top Chef has been one of my like go-to shows for years.
Me too.
And it's crazy. And I've seen it on the show, and like the female contestants who have been on the show have talked about it and spoken to the fact that, you know, if they're placed in a team with a male chef, like a lot of the time they automatically are like delegated to take this like sous chef.
To being like the sous chef,
role. Yeah. And so it's so interesting to me, especially when you look at people like Ina Garten and Rachel Ray and Giada. Ina is like the motherly, you know, at home. She's the barefoot Contessa, right? Like she's the one that's like, come into my home and I'll cook for you. Rachel Ray and Giada are also, I think, they're very traditionally beautiful women as well. So it's like, I think that plays into a little bit of like why they have not only a larger audience, but also that they don't, like you said, give off a specific attitude that we usually associate with being a head chef in a kitchen. Like usually we're kind of fed this idea that to be in the kitchen, you have to be gruff. You have to be like very domineering. And so
totally,
it's interesting that the women who have succeeded most, at least in the public sphere, don't have that view.
Right.
However, that's what the male chefs who have succeeded do have.
Right. And I think like if there were a female Gordon Ramsay, like she would be treated wildly differently than Gordon Ramsay is.
Agree.
Like, you know, I think Gordon Ramsay is like beloved and kind of like people love laughing at how mean he is. But yeah, that just like wouldn't fly if you were a female chef. That's right. So in walks Nina.
Yep.
The female Gordon Ramsay, and she gets called Nasty Nina.
She's so much nicer than Gordon Ramsay too. Like, I'm sorry.
Course.
Like, just because you offer some critical feedback does not make you mean, does not make you condescending. Like, it is wild to me. But that's one of the things that, we've both lived in LA. I know you still live in LA. And I think this is something that we associate with, we talk about this with women a lot, not just in the food industry, but like that there's a pedestal that we place women on, but it's like, it's a very fine line. Like, you have to be assertive, but you can't be too assertive because then you're a bitch. You have to be self-sufficient, but you have to let him open the door and do things for you because otherwise you're ungrateful. I know it's something that I think is explored a lot in the food industry, but also in media. I think when you're in any sort of public eye, like, it's automatically honed in a little bit more because we see this with people in movies, TV, music, like all the time.
Celebrity culture. Yeah, you see people like be treated differently if they seem at all like not grateful or not, happy all the time, just like deeply, deeply scrutinized.
Yeah, even on social media.
Oh yeah.
Especially on social media sometimes.
I know. I think that's why I incorporated social media into the chat in between chapters, like to show people reacting to her and to Leo, and to kind of show the difference between how a man is treated and how a woman is treated when they are celebrities, because I like going through comments on celebrity posts a lot and seeing what people say, because some of it is like just a little slice of humanity where you're like, wow, I didn't know that this even existed. I didn't know that people thought that they were okay to say this. But yeah, it is very fascinating.
It's amazing what people think they can say online and like,
Yes,
get away with what versus like saying it in real life to somebody's face.
That's right.
I never get over that. But yeah, I do. I love that. That's obviously like one of the topics explored in For Better or Worse. And then one of the other things that I really appreciate, and I love that we've seen more of this in the last couple of years, is just sort of highlighting any sort of mental health awareness. But what I really love in this book is that it applies to the male protagonist, because I don't know if we've seen enough of that. I don't know if we've seen enough men in our romance novels who have anxiety, who suffer panic attacks, and, cope with them and like figure out what coping mechanisms work, and who also have a great support system with their family and everything. So, I mean, I really loved reading that for Leo. That was one of my favorite things.
Yeah, he is a character who I really fell in love with while writing the book, where I was like, this is just a good man, and I think part of that is, I infused him with a lot of myself, I think, too, if I not to like, but I know it's fiction, obviously, but I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. Like, that's been a reality for me my whole life. And so, I wanted that to be part of this book, and I waffled between like who should be dealing with those issues, and it just felt like a really natural thing for Leo, this kind of like perfectionist character who's trying to hold his family together, that he would be kind of carrying this massive weight on his own, and it would kind of bubble up to the surface as we read the book. But yeah, I thought he was such a pleasure to write and read, because you don't see men talk about mental health all that much, and it was nice to be able to show his progression from like understanding that he has panic attacks and anxiety to accepting that he needs help, and we see him get help in the novel as well, which is really nice.
Yeah, no, that is nice. Well, and I also love I love his brother, his twin brother, who has a collection of onesies. Which I have to tell you, I know we talked about this a little bit before recording, but I'm working on a holiday novella, and there is a holiday onesie does play a major role in the book. So,
well, as you know, I'm in my closet right now, and I'm like looking at my onesies right here that I have. I have a few of them.
I love it. No, and I've said it before in my TikToks, like, and if people listening, by the way, you need to go follow Erin on TikTok, because if nothing else, you get to learn so much of the like behind the scenes stuff about, the Great British Baking Show and some of the behaviors that exist on these shows that, it's really interesting, like when you get like the full picture and everything. So
Yeah.
I think those are great. But no, one of the things that I've talked a lot about in my TikToks is that I'm just so done with the alpha hero. Like I am just so done with the overbearing, aggressive, dominant hero. And, if people listening are all about it, great. Read what you want to read. Like there is no complaining here. And I will still read one occasionally, but I am just so much more attracted to these men that you've probably seen the trend on TikTok where they do the video about being a soft top, where it's like, what's a soft top? And it's somebody who can be like aggressive in the bedroom, but like the rest of the time they're very nurturing and they like cover you up with a blanket and bring you food. And I'm like, perfection. Like this is like the Cinedom nature that I just love. But no, I'm just so much more invested in reading men that aren't telling me what to do, like whether it's in or outside of the bedroom.
I was going to say, like, I think a lot of it has to do with the time we're in right now.
Absolutely.
Where it is really just hard to read or engage with content where it is these, like, super aggressive men. And you're like, I get it. I am on Instagram. I see, like, my news updates and feed and, like, want to just, like, throw my phone across the room. Like, I don't want to engage with heroes who are then being super aggressive as well. Like, I totally feel that.
That's why so many of us have been reading monsters.
That's right. I will say I read my first Mafia book recently, and I had never read one before.
Okay.
And that obviously has an alpha mafia dude at its center, and I was like a little upset with how much I enjoyed the book. I was like, am I even a feminist anymore if I enjoy this book?
I'm questioning
and like, why
everything
do I
about
love
myself.
This? Yeah, I know. It's bad.
I totally get it. And I have those moments as well. And I just always remind myself that, obviously you can read what you read doesn't necessarily dictate what you're looking for in a partner in real life or, in the bedroom in real life. You could find some things that inspire you to.
You might find the mafia boss of your dreams. You never know.
Sure. Although there's so many mafia people in books that I'm like, where are they? Where are they walking around?
Right.
Like where are they going to stumble into like a coffee shop? Like, I don't see it.
I was talking to someone who said that mafia books they view it as a type of fantasy book.
I do too.
Like, yeah, and I had never heard that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Because, yeah, it's like close to real life in the fact that like people in the mafia exist, but it is also just a total fantasy world.
I do the same with any kind of modern royalty, like even if it's contemporary, like it's like, sure, there could be a prince somewhere like that you bump into, I guess. But at the same time, when I read romance, I generally want either like full escape or I want what I think of as like heightened reality, where I would think of For Better or Worse as like my heightened reality, that like this could be me. This could be any of my friends on any given day running into these people eating at their restaurant and everything, versus Mafia, king in disguise. I don't know. Like it could happen.
Hopefully you're not running into that person at your restaurant. It's not going to end well.
Exactly. So I tend to prefer reading more what I think of as realistic romance. And that's just my personal, preference. However, every now and then a good escape, there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh, I know. I do dip into fantasy a lot when I've like burned out on contemporary.
Yeah.
And I'll just like zip over to a fantasy book. But yeah.
Exactly. Well, so the other thing that I love about this book that I think will especially resonate with people who have either lived in Los Angeles at some point or maybe visited or are from the Los Angeles area, there's just so many wonderful local hotspot call outs, like references, and that just it
Yeah.
tickled my heart as a previous resident of LA.
Yeah, I tried to base like every restaurant that's in there is really based off of something, or I name check it. Uovo is a pasta place they eat at, and that is something that exists in LA. It's like my favorite pasta place here. And I did make up, I think you and I were chatting, there's like a donut shop in it, and that is based off of Donut Friend, which you and I both love.
Absolutely. You said
And,
vegan donuts, and my mind immediately went
Yep.
to, I was like, oh, Donut Friend, it's gotta be.
The thing about their donuts is like they're better than regular donuts, and like they're so good.
100%.
I don't know. Like I lose my mind anytime I have them. I like have to go lay down. I have to think about things. Cause I just like I'll order a dozen and then I do my little tasting menu of them. And then
Love
I
it.
like have so much sugar that I'm like running around and then have to go rest.
What other, like, if you were giving a food tour based on your book, what other spots, like,
Yeah.
where would we go?
Okay, so I changed the name in there, but the Chateau Marmont is one of the places they go to. It has really incredible fries that I can't recommend enough, and also a great like spaghetti bolognese. That is like a place that, like when I first moved to LA, my mom would come visit and she'd be like, I want to see celebrities. And that's like where I would take her. We would often see a celebrity eating there. And then there is also, let me think about that. So we have Uovo, we have
Donuts.
I'm trying to think where they go. Donuts, and then
Well, and then if you decide to do the day trip option, you would do the drive out to Oak Glen for the
I know
apple cider donuts,
like
which
Nina and Leah do. Well, first of all, the book is set in the fall in LA, so around Halloween time, which is my favorite time in LA. I really dislike the summer in LA, which is what it is right now. It's just so hot, and I'm not a hot weather kind of gal. But yeah, so I have them go to this kind of like apple country, basically, which is like in the fall. They do a lot of apple picking.
Yep.
They have these beautiful farms, and they have these incredible places where you can get, like you said, like hot apple cider, like fresh baked donuts, pies,
good.
bread, you name it. And that is wonderful. I feel like the thing I love about LA most is these like day trips you can
Yes.
take. Like in my second book that I'm writing, they go to Ojai, and that's one
Perfect.
of my favorite places. And I guess they go to Ojai in For Better or Worse too, because they go and have a little bit of a bender there. So
Well, now you just have to do like a Palm Springs and Joshua Tree like book,
oh
and
my
you'll
gosh,
be set.
Palm Springs is so necessary. Yeah, Palm Springs is really everything. It's funny because that's the place that I go to most on trips here is Palm Springs. It's like the best.
Yeah.
Just relax by a pool with a good book.
No, and that's one of the things I loved about living in LA. And I live in Portland, Oregon now, but I feel like it's actually similar in that way, is that I can drive an hour and a half in any direction and hit ocean, mountains, winery, or
So
desert.
nice.
Like, so
Yes.
So I loved that about LA as well. And I think, again, anybody can enjoy this book regardless of how well you know LA or how invested you are in the food scene. But I think if you're like me and you love to read books about food, like period, but also if you like to read books set in cities, which I don't think there are enough of. I think that there are so many small town romances that I like to see more city-based romances. Then I think both of those things will add an extra element to the book.
Totally. And I think, like, look, you read this book, you're going to be hungry. I would definitely recommend bringing snacks because I think there's food in every single chapter. Like, if Nina isn't cooking, then they're at a restaurant, like they're doing something. So, and I had my friend, I have a friend here who's a chef, and so he developed some of the recipes from the book for me.
Stop it.
And I'll share those on social, but they're so good because Nina is like a professionally trained like French chef, so it's a lot of these like gorgeous French recipes.
I hope obviously we're recording this before the book comes out. I hope you have some sort of like release party tasting event like to celebrate.
Yeah. I know my friend said that too. My friend was like, well, you're going to feed us, right? And I was like, yeah, don't worry. We'll figure it out. Yeah, I have events going on in LA, and there will be food at every single one of them. So
Thank
no problem,
goodness.
everyone. I'm not going somewhere if there's no food. Forget it.
Just in general.
Yes, absolutely. And if I know there's not going to be food, then I'm bringing snacks. So don't worry. Just tap me on the shoulder and I'll give you a snack no matter where we are.
I just finished reading another book where a woman goes to a like fancy gala and she brings like a bag of like Lay's potato chips in her purse. And I'm like,
excellent.
Oh, this is a woman.
That's my style.
Yeah, after my own heart.
Uh-huh.
I'm with you. Snacks. Well, and what's funny is, you know, because I know you mentioned it that For Better or Worse takes place in the fall in Los Angeles. When I release my book in October, it takes place picking up from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So it's kind of like you get the fall in Los Angeles from your book and then the winter in Los Angeles in my book.
I like can't wait for yours because I think I'm already in that mode of like, I just need the holidays to get here to get me through the rest of this year. Yeah. And it's like all I'm looking forward to, really. I'm just like, people are like, are you excited about your book release? I'm like, yeah. I also just really want like the holidays to be here now. So
it doesn't
let's
help
get through
that
it.
July has been like 3 months long.
You're so right.
Like,
I can't believe I just looked at the calendar. I'm like, oh, it's only like mid-July-ish right now.
10
like, how is that possible?
Days of July left, like at this time of recording. I'm just like, what? I know
this is not okay.
No, I always expect that from January, but like not July. Like this is where it should be a turning point.
That's right.
Oh, golly. But I'm with you. I am treasuring all the people who are already posting about Halloween. And don't come at me, people listening, because what comes after, 4th of July? If you celebrate that, what's the next holiday? It's Halloween.
It's Halloween. And Halloween is also a holiday that I feel like I celebrate constantly. Like I keep sometimes Halloween decor up in my house all year long because I love bats and black cats. So what can we do?
Yeah. And I love witches and crystals. So I mean, like, it's spooky all year. So, I mean, really, all I can say to everybody listening is if you are in the market for food porn, first and foremost, exploring dynamics between women in the restaurant industry, men who share their feelings and, sometimes have anxiety, like, this is the book for you. Like, this is really what I'm looking for in both like my female characters and my male characters. I love a woman on top. I love a woman in charge. And Nina is that unapologetically. And I just want to see more. I want to see more of it.
Me too. Thank you for saying that. She is like really important to me because of all of the things you just said. So thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, so now I have to ask, and I mean, this is so silly to talk about considering while we're recording this, the book isn't even out yet, but I'm like, tell me what's next for you.
Yeah, so my next book will come out next summer. It is a spin-off book from book one. It'll be Sophie's book.
Good.
So that's Nina's sister. And she's really fun. She is going to be like a romance author, and it's very meta, working on her second book. And the premise is that she's a romance author who's never been in love. So she revisits her past relationships, trying to figure out like what happened, what may have gone wrong there. And it'll be like a very fun story with a lot of really great sex scenes, I have to say. I am super excited about this.
I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because like I don't want to give too much away to people who haven't read For Better or Worse yet, but I have to say there's definitely some memorable sexy scenes, shall we say.
It's so funny because I feel like people just talk to me and they're like, can we talk about the 69 scene? Or they're like, I just want to talk about this scene.
That's the one.
And it is funny. Like, I don't see it that often. That's right. Yeah. I don't see that often. And I remember when I was writing it, I was like, I don't know why I don't see this in books, but it's great. And I'm going to put it in here.
I feel like maybe it was like, maybe it had its time. Like maybe it was in like a bunch of books at once in like the mid
People got sick of it.
2000s. And then it was like, oh,
Yeah.
we've moved on to doing like this now kind of thing. But I'm
Yeah.
here for it. Like it's a good 69
It's
scene.
super fun. Oh, yeah, I know. I was, like, so happy writing that. I think, like, I don't get shy about writing those scenes. It's, like, my favorite thing to write in the book, and so for the second book, I actually wrote the sex scenes
Oh my
first,
God.
and so probably a unique thing to do, but I wrote my sex scenes first and then wrote my
And
characters
so
around
how
them.
do the spice levels compare between the first book and the next one?
The second one is way spicier, and I actually just turned in rewrites on it, and I was like, I have no idea if my editor is gonna be like, "Can you take one of these out? Because, like, it's getting ridiculous now." But I just, like, the 2 in my next book, I just felt like their chemistry was so intense that I
Yes.
just kept being like, "We're adding another
Do
one.
it.
Now we're
Do
doing
it.
role
Do
playing.
it
Now we're
here.
doing a happy ending massage. Now we're doing outdoor sex." It was just, like, all of the things I wanted, I just put in that book, so it is very steamy.
I'm here for it. I also would like to become an advocate for in including a sexy epilogue in like books moving forward. Like
I do love those,
I'm
I know.
tired of the babies. Can they just bone?
Yeah, I intentionally, like, don't have my, leads having kids at the ends of the book because I do find it, like, a little alienating, and I say that as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm kind of like, I don't think like, most of the women I know, like, actually don't really wanna become moms, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not, like, their dream to become a mom, and so and, like, I don't know. It didn't feel right for Nina and Leo to
Yeah.
end with kids, and
Yeah.
same in my next
And
book. I was sort of like, I don't really want this.
times are changing, and obviously like the conversation surrounding certain topics, especially pregnancy these days, is changing. And
I
so,
know.
it makes sense to like
And do you
reflect
know?
that.
Yeah, and I think too, like I had a really hard time conceiving my daughter,
Mm.
and so I think for me with romance books, like I almost want to break from these like storylines where it's like they accidentally get pregnant or they like just everything is super easy because
Yeah.
I'm sort of like I need like a mental break from that kind of stuff,
Sure.
and so yeah, I kind of was careful in this book and my next one to kind of like if there is pregnancy mentioned, it's more like we tried for a long time or like because I don't see that kind of like mention in most romance books.
Not
It's
in
more like
enough.
this was easy.
Yeah, I would like to see that discussed more. It's definitely lacking. Like, I mean, as much as we're discussing like reproductive rights, both like on and off the page right now, like I'd love to see
Yeah,
all the different pieces of that puzzle, like as opposed to just
totally.
pregnancy or no pregnancy, like everything in between. Like, what are the different possibilities and outcomes? So, yeah, because I think we all automatically connect more to books where it's we find a story or a character that connects somewhat to us and our personal story or journey or insecurities that we've had. So the more diverse stories we can get like that, the more opportunities we have to find a story that matches our own.
Well, the thing that like I feel like really drew me into romances was just like the fact that so many different types of people and topics have been covered. I feel like in the last few years, like I just feel like we're seeing a lot more authors feeling like they have a space to talk about maybe what makes them unique or what makes their readers unique in very different ways that
Yeah.
I haven't seen reflected in like mainstream literature as much. And I feel like the romance community is so inviting of those different types of stories, like just like craves that kind of storytelling, and it's really a pleasure to see more stories like that coming out. Obviously we need a lot more, but like I'm seeing like a lot of more like covers that are not just the same types of people. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Like you're seeing just like a lot of different types of people, and I hope we see more of that.
You and me both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, and that is there a story that you haven't had the chance to tell yet that you would love to tell? The dream project that just kind of lurks around your brain at night?
Well, I feel like it's interesting you brought that up because I feel like my second book is going to tap into a little bit of that for me. Like I am a person who has kind of like had a journey with my own sexuality and like coming, like I don't even know if it's like a coming out because this is so new for me to even talk like to anyone about. I've just started talking to friends about it, but like I, have known for the last, I don't know, maybe couple of years, like in the back of my head, like I know I'm not straight, but like not sure which box I fit into because I feel like a lot of the expectation is like you find your box and you sit in it. And so for me, like I haven't really figured out which box I sit in, if there's a box. Like I don't really love labels, but I know like I'm not straight. And so Sophie's story is about someone who is not straight and is sort of finding her own journey that way. So I feel like Sophie's story is sort of like telling a part of that. And I feel like, me kind of like diving more into my sexuality now that I'm in my 30s, like sort of like figuring it out later in life, I guess. Like something I've been exploring my whole life, but now I'm like coming more into my own about. Like I feel like that will be something I explore more in stories, but Sophie's journey is probably the first step in that, I guess.
Oh, I love that, and it makes me just want to read it more.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. I think it's like it's been a really interesting time for me because writing her book made me feel like, okay, this is maybe a topic like I need to talk more openly about and share more about, because I feel like there are probably a lot of other readers who, like me, know they aren't straight, but maybe they can't squarely identify as bi or pansexual, but like they're figuring it out and like exist on that kind of like spectrum the way that I feel like I do. So
Yeah.
it's something that I think like those types of characters I'll write more about.
And I for one would love to read that. I think that's kind of how I always think of, at least for me personally, that's how I think of the term queer, as just sort of being like this umbrella term that it's like maybe you don't know specifically like where you fit under this queer umbrella, but that you're under the umbrella. There's just not maybe like a specific space that you're in or you don't want to subscribe to, which is also okay.
Yeah, it's something I'm like, I feel like I'm working this out in real time with you because I'm like, it's something I've been talking to my therapist and my husband about too, where I'm like, like what terms am I allowed to even use for myself? Like I know the one thing, I'm not straight, right? But like which then am I allowed to use? So it's probably a journey other people will have to help me with too as I go along with it. But I'm like, very happy to share stories that are not all on the same kind of spectrum, the way that I feel like I'm existing on a spectrum too. So
yeah.
Anyways, if that makes any sense.
No, I love that.
But,
and I'm excited, that you're embracing this journey for yourself as well as for your characters. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I think it'll be like hopefully help also just other readers who kind of feel the same way as I do.
Absolutely.
Where it's sort of like, I'm not sure if I'm this or this.
Yeah.
And like, where do I exist? Kind
yeah.
of thing.
I mean, it's like we said, we like to see ourselves reflected in the stories we read in some way, in one way or another, whether it's, monster fucking or contemporary enemies to lovers.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh. Erin, where can the fine people listening at home find and follow you?
Okay, if you're on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Erin La Rosa Lit. If you are on TikTok, it's at Erin La Rosa Writes. That's right.
Good. Okay. Those are the places. And like I said, I love your TikTok. So I can't believe this is the first time we're actually
Thank you, Kelly.
Chatting because I feel like we already know each other.
Yeah, same. I know. It feels like I'm talking to an old friend. So
just a new friend.
That's right. That's right. Old and new.
Old and new. I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for chatting with me. Everybody, please go grab For Better or Worse. It's available now. It's got a super cute cover with super hot, sexy people on it and a nice piece of cake. So that's something that I fully endorse on any book cover. And, just the content inside makes it even better. So
put it on your coffee table next to a fake orange.
Right? We got to decorate those we got to get our art books out and decorate those tables.
Yeah, that's right.
This is art. This book is art, and I will stand by that. Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.